Do not follow the ideas of others, but learn to listen to the voice within yourself. Hello, everybody. How are you all doing? Well, today's Wednesday, and I'm going on a hike. Now, I have to say, it's been a while since I've done a hike. Some of you know I was traveling for a few weeks, and then before that, I was just too busy. So I think it's been a couple of months. Feels like it's been more than that. But anyways, I'm going today. I'm going to a new place called Tafoni Loop. Tafoni? Not sure how to pronounce it. So I'm very excited about this. Later, I would like to share with you something that I get asked quite often. And I just saw a video from Doug Smith. Some of you know Doug Smith. Either you follow his channel or you've seen him on my interview. Also, he was on my live stream. He made an appearance. His last video was called How I Got Into Buddhism. And I listened to that and I thought it was quite interesting. I'll put a link down below to that video. During the interview, we didn't really get deep into how he got into Buddhism. He gave me a brief kind of summary about how he got into Buddhism. But his video goes into it a little bit deeper. So I thought, since it's the question I get asked a lot, I'd like to share that with you. So this video would be called How I Got Into Zen. I hope you find this interesting. If you don't, you can just skip this video. But anyways, I have about 36 minutes left to the destination. There's a little bit of traffic, nothing unusual for this Bay Area here. So I'm going to focus on driving and catch up with you when I arrive at the destination. I believe we're here. I know it looks like I'm just walking down the side of a road here, but let's see if the trail is up here. Mid-Peninsula, a regional open space district. El Corte de Madera Creek Open Space Preserve. So I guess that's where we are. And I think that is the trail I want. Tafoni? Well, I guess we'll find out. I feel like going this way. Tafoni formations at the sandstone caves. Was I Buddhist? When I was growing up. When I was a kid, I never even heard of Buddhism. It wasn't until my early 20s. I did hear my dad say when he was younger, he grew up Mormon, and my mom grew up Catholic. She even went to a Catholic high school. So later, my dad told me he was atheist. So my dad was atheist, and my mom was Catholic. So my parents didn't know what to do with my brother and I when it came to religion. So we never were exposed to any of it. I did have a next-door neighbor. He was a friend of mine who was Christian. Now, I remember going to church with him a couple of times. It was like a class for teenagers, and the only reason why I went with him was to meet girls. That didn't work out so well. But other than that, I was never exposed to any kind of religion. When I was 20, my high school girlfriend and I moved to Seattle. I talked a little bit about this in my book. So when I moved to Seattle, I was playing music, working in the music industry for a very short time. But I started taking up tablas. Now, tablas is a percussion instrument that you'll hear in North Indian classical music. So I was studying North Indian classical music with a couple of teachers. One of those teachers was Zakir Hussain. Has anybody heard of Zakir Hussain? And then I started getting exposed to Hinduism. And I thought it was really interesting, just the whole premise of cause and effect, and whatever you do has a natural result. So I took a little interest into Hinduism. My teacher was from Iran, and he was Muslim. So I also was exposed to a little bit of Islam. But it wasn't until my mid-20s where I discovered Buddhism and Zen. Let me tell you about that in a bit. So, how did I discover Zen? Well, I'm in my early 20s, living in Seattle, working as an audio engineer, studying the tabla, playing the guitar in a band. We're playing around the city. My high school girlfriend and I got married. Everything seemed to be going great. And then life happened. So the first thing is I lost my job as an audio engineer. That's another story I can get into later. My parents were getting a divorce. My friends were struggling with things. And something I noticed that frightened me, that I was getting a very sharp pain in my left hand and arm. So it seemed like I had arthritis and tendonitis. So I started to think, gosh, am I going to be able to play music? I started playing music when I was 13 years old. And I always identified as a musician. You know, when I was growing up, I didn't really fit in, at least that's what I thought, at school. Wasn't interested in school activities very much. But when I discovered music, I fell in love. I was music, and music was me. It was something I can express. If I was going through some difficulty, I can express these feelings, thoughts through music. So here I am, early 20s, and very sharp pain. And I started to think, wow, if I'm not going to play music, what am I going to do? So I started freaking out a little bit. My wife at the time was very clear about what she wanted. She was ready to have kids. And I'd have to say, I don't know if I was against having kids. I know back then it's hard to remember about the past. One thing about the past is a lot of the time we just paint it the way we want it. So I don't want to say much about it. I just remember feeling confused about myself and about what I wanted to do in life. So I started panicking. When I was playing guitar, after about 20 minutes, this shooting pain would go down my arm. My hands felt like they were going to lock up. So I was panicking. So I started freaking out. And I got a job, a temporary job, I guess, at a medical clinic. And a friend of mine recommended that I would see a therapist. And I said, no, thank you. Therapists are for crazy people. And she looked at me and said, you know what? That's not true. But if it was true, you're crazy right now. And I really was. I felt like everything was falling apart. Wasn't able to play music, or at least not well, or in pain. Lost my job. And I was confused about my marriage. Should I have kids and just do what everyone else does? And that was the thing that was going on in my mind too at that time, was it felt like we all have to follow the same thing. You know, we grow up, go to school, go to college, you get a good job, you get married, you have kids, grandkids, and then you retire and travel the world. But I always in my mind, I thought, who made up that idea? And it just didn't feel right intuitively to do that, at least at that time. So I started freaking out. Also, I noticed that, especially seeing my parents going through a divorce, that we chase so many things in our lives to satisfy our needs and our wants, to make us happy. But like I mentioned in a previous video, if we don't get those things that are going to make us happy, we're dissatisfied. If we get those things that make us happy, none of it stays. Everything appears and then disappears. Or maybe we get the thing that we want to make us happy, but if it was a little bit different, then I would be really happy. If I just got paid more, if I was a little bit taller, if my partner was nicer to me, right? There's all these things that cause dissatisfaction. So of course, what's the point of this? What is the meaning of this life? So I was seeing this therapist, and she was very interesting. She practiced something. I can't remember what it was. And I went to see her a few times, and then my ex, I guess, my wife at the time, saw her for a few times. And it was pretty clear that we were going to separate. Very painful times. And I remember seeing this therapist for the last time, just to say goodbye and thank you. So I went to see this therapist, and she looked at me and said, I want to ask you something, Jason. In many of our sessions, you said, I am music, music is me. And I said, yep, I did say that. So then she said, what percent of music is you? I thought that was an interesting question, but I just shouted out, 90%. She said, really? Let me ask you this. When you're not playing music, what are you? And I completely froze. I was a little bit embarrassed because I thought I knew exactly what I was. But if I'm not playing music, then what am I? So I told her, I don't know. So she recommended that I investigate that. That's all she said. Investigate that. What is this thing that goes to the grocery store, that eats food, that goes to work? What is that thing when you're not playing music? So this led me to investigate that. And the first thing I thought of was meditation. So I had a friend, close friend, who I used to play music with. He told me about this place called the Shiva Bali Yoga Center, I believe it was called. It was a meditation group. So one day he told me, you know what, let's meet there on Tuesday and we can try it out, see if it can help you. I said, cool, I'll meet you there. So come Tuesday, I show up at this place. My friend's not there. So I go in, I'm a little bit nervous, and got a meditation instruction. And it wasn't very much. Pretty much sit down, relax, don't think about anything. And that sitting was 1 hour long. It was the most painful experience I've ever had, at least physically, and also mentally. But after this meditation, they would get together and play these bhajans. And they needed a tabla player. So the next time that I went there, I brought my tablas. So we sat for 1 hour, then we played music. And I have to tell you, that was amazing, of just experiencing that connection with others and music. And of course, afterwards, they would eat this amazing food. So I went there for, I can't remember how long, maybe a few months. And then I remembered the person who gave me the meditation instruction telling me that meditation means making your mind clear. I said, great. But I started to think, well, once my mind is clear, then what? So I went up to this person and asked, you say that meditation helps our mind become clear. So when our mind becomes clear, then what? And he really didn't have an answer. And I decided not to continue with that group. So my friend at work gave me a book. And this is the first book I got about Buddhism. Let me show you this book. This book is called the Shambhala Pocket Classics, The Teachings of the Buddha. And it has all kinds of teachings, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. There's some Zen teaching in there. I really didn't notice the Zen teachings. I didn't know the difference, to be honest, what was Buddhism, what was Zen. But I want to share with you something I read that I just resonated with. This teaching is from Zen Master Dogen, and the piece is called The Practice of Meditation. Truth is perfect and complete in itself. It is not something newly discovered. It has always existed. Truth is not far away. It is ever present. It is not something to be attained, since not one of your steps leads away from it. Do not follow the ideas of others, but learn to listen to the voice within yourself. Your body and mind will become clear, and you will realize the unity of all things. When I heard this, it was like a lightning bolt shooting through my mind. Especially do not follow the ideas of others. And I felt like that's what I was doing my whole life. Just following someone's idea, following society's idea. And also different religions and spiritual practice always claim that they have the truth. So I love this about that the truth is not outside of ourselves. It's already here. And listen to the voice within yourself. And that's when I really started to experience strong intuition. In fact, when my ex-wife and I separated, it was an intuitive response because whatever I thought about didn't make sense. So after I read this, I decided to look into other types of Buddhist practice. And my friend also gave me the book Open Heart, Clear Mind. Have you read that book? Open Heart, Clear Mind is an amazing book, and it really brought Buddhist teaching down to earth in a very practical manner, which I really resonated with. Because I mentioned earlier, sometimes I thought Hinduism was a little bit confusing. There were some teachings from Buddha that was a little bit confusing to me. You know, I'm not an intellectual kind of person. I'm a more sensible or intuitive person. So reading Open Heart, Clear Mind really woke me up to Buddhism. And also, the author mentioned about Zen, especially the story about the two monks arguing over a flag. If you haven't heard that story, go look it up. But that's when I really started resonating with Zen, and actually after reading this teaching from Zen Master Dogen, so I said, you know, I'm going to look for a Zen center. So I looked through some local magazines and I saw this place called the Dharma Sound Zen Center in Seattle, and I said, I'm going. So my friend who gave me the books drove me to the Zen Center, and it was just a little house in a small neighborhood called Ballard. So we went to the door. It was like a beginner's night, and the door opened, and there was a man standing there with a bald head. Some of you may know him. He used to be a monk. Now he is Tim Lurch Judo Popsanim, who's my very close Dharma brother. So he gave me a meditation instruction, and the first thing he said, Zen means, what are you? And when I heard that, I was like, that's it. That's all I needed to hear. I didn't care about the forms. You know, they had chanting and bowing, which I didn't want to do. I just wanted to sit. But I didn't care because I heard that. I was like, that's what I want to investigate. What am I? Then I was talking about how I want to help this world. I was telling, well, his name was Chung Hasening at the time. And then he said, what are you doing right now in this moment? I said, sitting here talking to you. And he said, you already are helping this world. Now, it didn't make sense up here, but it made sense in my gut. And after that, I never looked back. I never even investigated other Zen centers or other Buddhist Zen centers. I was just interested in this big question. What am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of this life? So that's how I got into Zen practice. I hope this video was interesting or helpful in some way. I'd be interested in hearing from you and how you got into either Buddhism, Zen, or meditation. Let me know in the comments below. Okay, everyone, I hope you're all doing well, and I will see you very soon.